Tonight, we drift back through time, far beyond the familiar world of humans and mammals, beyond even the age of dinosaurs. We're traveling to a period so distant that it feels like visiting another planet entirely. This is the Devonian Period, 400 million years ago, when life was just beginning its grand experiment with land. Picture yourself standing at the edge of an ancient world. The air feels different here, thicker, warmer, with about 15% oxygen instead of the 21% you're used to. It's breathable, but each breath carries unfamiliar scents, damp earth, rich organic decay, and something else, the smell of a world being born. The sky above stretches in an unusual haze of yellow-green, filtering sunlight in a way that makes everything appear dreamlike and soft. There are no birds crossing the sky, no familiar calls or songs. Instead, a gentle, constant humming fills the air, the sound of countless tiny wings belonging to the first insects to take flight. Beneath your feet lies not soil as you know it, but something entirely different. It's a living carpet, soft and spongy, made of primitive plants called liverworts and mosses. They form interconnected mats that stretch as far as you can see, creating cushioned pathways through this ancient landscape. The ground yields slightly with each step, like walking on a vast green sponge that holds the memory of every raindrop. Rising from this mossy foundation, strange towers reach toward the hazy sky. These aren't trees, though they might seem like them at first glance. They're prototaxites, giant fungi that grew taller than any plant of their time. Their surfaces are ribbed and striped, resembling enormous columns in a cathedral built by nature's earliest architects. Some stretch 20 feet or more into the air, creating the first forests Earth had ever known, though they were forests unlike any that would come after. You notice the profound silence. This world lacks the soundtrack you associate with living places. No leaves rustle in the breeze because true leaves haven't been invented yet. No birds sing because birds won't exist for another 100 million years. Even the wind moves differently here, flowing over surfaces that have never felt such contact before. The silence isn't empty though, it's full of potential, heavy with the weight of evolutionary experiments just beginning. As you walk through this landscape, small movements catch your eye. A segmented creature, no larger than your thumb, makes its way across the mossy ground. It's one of the early arthropods, a distant ancestor of modern insects and spiders. Its movements seem both deliberate and tentative, as if it too is figuring out how this whole living on land thing is supposed to work. The water that borders this strange continent appears dark and mysterious. Occasionally, gentle ripples disturb its surface, hinting at the rich underwater world that still dominates the planet. The Devonian oceans teem with life, armored fish and early sharks, coral reefs more massive than any that exist today, and countless creatures that have no modern equivalent. But here on land, life is simpler, quieter, more experimental. Every organism you encounter is a pioneer, one of the first to try breathing air instead of water, to find nutrients in soil instead of sea. They move with the careful uncertainty of explorers in an unmapped territory, because that's exactly what they are. The light begins to shift as imaginary time passes, becoming softer and more golden. The constant hum of insects creates a natural lullaby, a rhythm that speaks of life adapting, evolving, slowly but steadily claiming new territories. This is a world of infinite patience, where changes happen over geological time, where every small step forward represents millions of years of trial and refinement. As you settle into this ancient rhythm, feeling the soft give of the mossy ground and breathing the thick, humid air, you become part of the slow, steady pulse of early life. The urgency of modern existence fades away, replaced by the deep, unhurried breathing of a planet learning how to live. Time flows like honey in this ancient world, each moment stretching into the next with the patience of geological ages. As you move deeper into the Devonian landscape, the soft humming of insects becomes a gentle constant, like the sound of distant rain on leaves that don't yet exist. The mossy carpet beneath your feet gradually gives way to slightly firmer ground, where the first true soil is forming. This isn't the rich, dark earth you know from modern forests, but something simpler, tiny particles of weathered rock mixed with the remains of the earliest land plants. Each step you take connects you to one of Earth's first experiments in creating the foundation for terrestrial life. Around you, the fungal towers of prototaxites create natural columns in this living cathedral. Their surfaces aren't smooth like tree bark, but textured with intricate patterns that speak of growth measured in centuries rather than seasons. Some lean slightly, creating gentle arches overhead that filter the golden green light into dancing patterns on the ground below. Between these towering fungi, you discover gardens of the most delicate beauty. Early vascular plants, the pioneers of land vegetation, grow in clusters like small green flames reaching toward the sky. These are the rhiniophytes, among Earth's first plants to develop internal systems for moving water and nutrients. They appear deceptively simple, thin, branching stems without leaves, topped with small spore-bearing capsules. Yet they represent one of evolution's most profound innovations, the ability to live entirely on land. The air here carries a different quality of moisture, not the heavy dampness of a swamp, but something lighter, fresher, the breath of a world learning to support life above water. Occasionally, tiny droplets of dew catch the filtered sunlight, creating momentary jewels scattered across the primitive landscape. Your wandering brings you to a small clearing where the ground forms a natural depression, creating a shallow pool fed by groundwater seeping through the new soil. The water moves slowly, almost imperceptibly, carrying dissolved minerals that will eventually become the nutrients for more complex plant communities. Around the pool's edge, small formations of what look like tiny corals have grown. These are actually stromatolites, created by some of Earth's earliest life forms, cyanobacteria, which continue their ancient work of adding oxygen to the atmosphere. A subtle movement draws your attention to the water's surface. Gentle ripples spread outward from the center of the pool, created not by wind, which barely stirs in this sheltered place, but by something beneath. The ripples form perfect, expanding circles, each one catching and scattering the amber light in hypnotic patterns. As you observe these peaceful disturbances, you notice other small signs of life. A delicate, lace-like organism drifts just below the surface, one of the early freshwater animals making the transition from marine to terrestrial environments. Its movements are unhurried, graceful, following currents and chemical signals in ways that seem almost choreographed. The soundscape of this ancient pool adds new notes to the Devonian symphony, a gentle bubbling as gases escape from decomposing plant matter, the soft plip of water droplets falling from overhead fungi, and underneath it all, that constant, peaceful humming that seems to emanate from the very air itself. Time moves differently here. Minutes could be hours, hours could be days, and it wouldn't matter. This is a world operating on its own schedule, where change happens slowly enough that you could watch evolution itself if you had the patience. The urgency that drives modern life has no place in this ancient garden, where success is measured not in speed, but in persistence, not in competition, but in finding one's perfect niche. As you rest beside the tranquil pool, breathing the oxygen-rich air that these early plants are helping to create, you feel yourself synchronizing with this deeper, slower rhythm. Your heartbeat seems to match the gentle pulse of water against the pool's edge. Your breathing aligns with the rise and fall of the subtle breeze that carries spores and the promise of new growth across the landscape. The Devonian world wraps around you like a warm, living blanket, holding you in its ancient embrace as the soft light continues its slow dance through the towering fungi above. As the gentle light of this ancient day begins its slow transition toward evening, you find yourself drawn deeper into the Devonian landscape. The air grows slightly cooler, carrying with it new scents. The green smell of growing things, the earthy richness of soil still learning how to be soil, and underneath it all, something sweet and clean that speaks of a world unmarked by pollution or haste. Your path leads you into what might be called the first true forest, though it bears little resemblance to the forests of later eons. Here, the prototaxites fungi have grown even taller, some reaching nearly 30 feet into the sky. They stand like gentle giants, their ribbed surfaces creating a natural colonnade that frames your passage through this living cathedral. Between these fungal pillars, a new kind of plant life flourishes. Small trees, though calling them trees requires some imagination, stretch upward with determination that seems almost touching. These are early lycophytes, primitive relatives of modern club mosses, but here they grow with the confidence of pioneers. Their trunks are thin, and their leaves are small and scale-like, giving them an appearance both delicate and resilient. The canopy they create is sparse by modern standards, but it provides just enough shelter to create a sense of enclosure, of being held gently within nature's first attempt at architectural complexity. Shafts of the amber-tinted light filter down through this primitive canopy, creating columns of illuminated air where tiny spores drift like slow snow. As you walk, your footsteps make almost no sound on the soft carpet of decomposing plant matter. This is one of Earth's first experiments with what will eventually become the forest floor ecosystem, layers of fallen stems and leaves creating rich humus that feeds new growth. The process is simpler here, more direct, without the complex web of fungi and bacteria that will characterize later forests, but it works with elegant efficiency. You come upon a small grove where several of the larger lycophytes have grown close together, their canopies intertwining to create a natural shelter. Beneath them, the air is still and peaceful, filled with that constant, gentle humming that has become the soundtrack of your journey. Here, the first forest creates its first microclimate, slightly cooler, more humid, protected from the direct effects of sun and wind. In this sheltered space, you discover one of the Devonians' most charming inhabitants, small salamander-like creatures that represent life's earliest successful attempts at permanent land dwelling. These early amphibians move with cautious grace, their four legs still bearing the awkward proportions of limbs recently evolved from fins. They're no larger than your hand, and they navigate their world with the careful attention of creatures still learning the rules of terrestrial existence. One of these small pioneers pauses near a shallow puddle formed by recent rains. Its breathing is visible, a gentle rise and fall of its sides as primitive lungs work alongside gills that won't disappear for millions of years yet. There's something profoundly peaceful about watching the simple act of respiration, this fundamental rhythm that connects all air-breathing life. The creature's skin glistens with moisture, and you realize you're witnessing one of evolution's most important innovations, the development of skin that can both breathe and protect, that can interface with air while maintaining the delicate internal chemistry inherited from aquatic ancestors. It's a biological compromise that speaks to life's extraordinary creativity in solving the challenges of a new environment. As evening deepens, the light filtering through the lycophyte canopy takes on warmer tones. The forest fills with gentle sounds, the soft drip of condensation, the whisper of the earliest wind through the earliest leaves, and always that peaceful humming that seems to rise from the very ground itself. You saddle against one of the larger fungal pillars, feeling its surprisingly solid support against your back. The surface is neither rough like tree bark nor smooth like stone, but something in between, organic and alive, yet ancient and patient. As you rest, breathing in rhythm with this primordial forest, you feel the deep contentment that comes from being held safely within nature's first embrace. The evening light grows softer still as your journey carries you toward the edge of the ancient continent. Here, the distinction between land and water blurs in the most gentle way possible. The Devonian shoreline isn't a sharp boundary, but a gradual transition, where terrestrial plants wade into shallow seas and marine life ventures tentatively onto mudflats warmed by the eternal sun. You find yourself walking along what might be called the beach, though it bears little resemblance to the sandy shores of later periods. The ground beneath your feet is a mixture of fine sediment and organic matter, soft and yielding like wet clay. Each step leaves a temporary impression that slowly fills with seepage from the vast warm ocean that stretches to the horizon. The water here is remarkably clear, with a slight green tint that speaks of abundant microscopic life. Unlike the deep ocean, these shallows are warm and inviting, heated by a sun that shines more directly on this greenhouse world. The sea extends outward in gentle gradations of depth, from ankle-deep pools where you stand to knee-deep channels carved by countless tides. Beneath the surface, you can observe one of Earth's most spectacular achievements, vast coral reefs that dwarf anything the modern world has known. These aren't built by modern corals, but by ancient reef builders working in partnerships that will never be seen again. Stromatoporoids, sponge-like organisms, form the foundation, their layered skeletons creating natural platforms. Upon these, true corals add their own limestone contributions, while bryozoans and other small filter feeders fill in the spaces with delicate lace-like structures. The reef creates underwater gardens of extraordinary beauty. Branching forms reach upward like underwater trees, while massive, dome-shaped colonies provide shelter for countless small inhabitants. The water around the reef shimmers with movement as primitive fish navigate between the coral formations, their movements unhurried and graceful. You wade carefully into the warm water, feeling its gentle embrace around your ankles. The sensation is like stepping into a vast living bathtub maintained at perfect temperature by the planet's natural systems. Small waves lap against your legs with a rhythm that seems to echo the planet's own pulse, steady and eternal. In these shallow waters, you witness one of evolution's most important chapters, the rise of the vertebrates. Early fish move through the reef like living jewels, their scales catching and refracting the filtered sunlight. Some are armored with bony plates that give them the appearance of swimming tanks, while others display the sleek forms that hint at the direction fish evolution will eventually take. Among the most remarkable inhabitants of these waters are the early sharks, though they look quite different from their modern descendants. Their movements are fluid and hypnotic, following ancient hunting patterns that predate all terrestrial vertebrates. They represent predation refined to its essential elements, perfect efficiency operating within perfect patience. The boundary between water and land becomes even more blurred as you notice plants growing directly in the shallows. These aquatic pioneers extend the terrestrial experiment back into the sea, creating underwater meadows that sway gently in the current. Their movement is mesmerizing, a slow dance choreographed by water and time that speaks of life's endless adaptability. Small arthropods move through these underwater gardens like tiny maintenance crews, their segmented bodies perfectly adapted for life in this intermediate zone. They crawl along submerged stems and swim between coral branches with equal ease, demonstrating the flexibility that will make their kind among evolution's greatest success stories. As you stand in this warm, ancient sea, watching the interplay of life forms that represent hundreds of millions of years of evolutionary experimentation, you feel the profound peace that comes from witnessing perfection in process. The water supports your weight, while the gentle current provides a natural massage, and the constant, quiet activity of the reef creates a living meditation on the theme of existence itself. Leaving the gentle embrace of the shallow seas, you follow a meandering waterway that carries the essence of the ocean inland. This ancient river moves with the unhurried pace of geological time, its waters dark and rich with dissolved minerals that will eventually nourish the expanding terrestrial world. The sound of flowing water creates a natural lullaby, a constant murmur that seems to carry the secrets of deep time within its liquid voice. The riverbanks rise gently on either side, carpeted with the soft mosses and liverworts that have become your familiar companions in this journey through Earth's distant past. Here and there, the early vascular plants have established small colonies along the water's edge, their simple forms reflected in the slow-moving torrent, like nature's first attempt at mirror imagery. As you walk alongside this ancient waterway, you notice how it serves as a corridor for life moving between different environments. Small arthropods navigate between the aquatic plants that grow in the shallows and the terrestrial vegetation that lines the banks. Their movements are unhurried and purposeful, following patterns established over millions of years of patient adaptation. The river itself tells a story written in layers of sediment and dissolved minerals. Unlike modern rivers, which carry the runoff from complex terrestrial ecosystems, this waterway flows through a world still learning the art of soil formation. Its load consists primarily of weathered rock and the simple organic compounds produced by early plant life, the basic ingredients from which all future terrestrial complexity will grow. You pause at a spot where the river widens into a natural pool, creating a mirror-still surface that perfectly reflects the amber-tinted sky above. In this tranquil backwater, time seems to slow even further. Water striders, among the first insects to master surface tension, glide across the liquid mirror with movements so graceful they seem choreographed by the water itself. Beneath the surface, you can observe the gentle dance of early freshwater life. Primitive fish move through the water with an economy of motion that speaks to millions of years of refinement. Their scales catch the filtered sunlight, creating brief flashes of silver and gold that ripple outward from their passage like liquid stars. Along the muddy margins of the pool, you discover one of the Devonians' most remarkable innovations: tracks. These aren't the deep impressions left by large animals, but delicate traceries in the soft sediment, evidence of some of Earth's first tentative steps onto land. Each print tells a story of evolutionary courage, the willingness to leave the security of water for the uncertainty of air. The atmosphere around the river carries its own unique character. The air is humid but not oppressive, filled with the gentle perfume of water-loving plants and the clean scent of flowing current. Occasionally, a light breeze stirs the primitive vegetation along the banks, creating soft, rustling sounds that blend harmoniously with the water's constant murmur. As evening continues its slow approach, the quality of light reflected from the river's surface becomes increasingly magical. The water acts as a lens, focusing and dispersing the sun's rays in patterns that dance hypnotically across the surrounding landscape. These light patterns play across the simple forms of early plants, creating an ever-changing display of natural artistry. You settle beside a gentle bend in the river where the water has carved a comfortable depression in the bank. This spot provides a perfect vantage point for observing the peaceful interaction between land and water that characterizes this ancient world. Here, evolution's greatest experiment, the transition from aquatic to terrestrial life, plays out in slow motion. Each small adaptation represents thousands of generations of patient refinement. The river's voice becomes more soothing as the day progresses towards its close, its liquid conversation with stones and sediment creating a natural symphony that speaks of persistence, patience, and the deep contentment that comes from finding one's perfect course through the landscape landscape of existence. As twilight begins its gentle descent over the Devonian world, you find yourself in a landscape transformed by the day's final light. The river you've been following has led you to a broad valley where water spreads into countless small channels, creating a natural delta that serves as a nursery for both aquatic and terrestrial life. Here, in this network of shallow streams and temporary pools, evolution conducts some of its most delicate experiments. The air has grown cooler with evening's approach, but it remains comfortably warm, carrying the scent of water and growing things mixed with something indefinably ancient, the smell of a world still writing its own rules. The constant hum of early insects has softened to a gentle whisper, creating a natural white noise that seems to emanate from the very atmosphere itself. In this delta environment, you discover plants unlike any you've encountered in your journey so far. These are the early seed plants, though their seeds are still primitive compared to what will come later. They represent one of evolution's most significant innovations, the ability to package the next generation in a protective coating that can survive periods of drought or cold. Each tiny seed contains not just genetic material, but provisions for the journey, a complete life support system in miniature. The plants themselves grow in graceful clusters around the edges of the water channels. Their leaves are simple but effective, designed to capture sunlight and carbon dioxide with elegant efficiency. Some display the first experiments with what will eventually become flowers, though these early attempts at reproduction through attraction are still crude and understated compared to the spectacular blooms of later eras. You settle on a small rise that provides a panoramic view of this ancient delta system. From here, you can observe the intricate dance between water and land that defines this transitional environment. Small channels merge and divide in patterns that speak to the fundamental mathematics of fluid dynamics, creating natural geometries that will be rediscovered by human mathematicians hundreds of millions of years in the future. The water moves with hypnotic slowness, each current following the path of least resistance through the soft sediments that the river has deposited over countless seasons. Occasionally, a gentle eddy creates perfect spirals on the water's surface, temporary mandalas that form and dissolve in a meditation on impermanence and flow. As evening deepens, new sounds emerge from this watery landscape. The soft plop of gas bubbles rising from decomposing plant matter, the gentle splash of early amphibians moving between pools, and underneath it all, the quiet conversation between water and earth that has continued uninterrupted for billions of years. You notice how the fading light transforms everything it touches. The simple plants become silhouettes against the amber sky, their forms reduced to essential lines that speak to the mathematical principles underlying all organic growth. The water channels become ribbons of reflected sky, creating a landscape that seems to exist as much in the heavens as on Earth. Small movements in the shallow pools draw your attention to one of the Devonian's most charming inhabitants, early crustaceans that have ventured into fresh water. These tiny creatures move with a delicate precision that speaks to millions of years of aquatic refinement, their jointed legs creating minute currents as they navigate between underwater plants. The overall effect of this evening delta landscape is profoundly peaceful. Here, in this network of gentle waters and pioneering plants, you witness evolution at its most patient and methodical. There's no hurry here, no pressure to succeed quickly. Instead, there's the deep satisfaction of processes that unfold according to their own perfect timing, guided by principles as reliable as gravity and as patient as stone.
As you rest in this tranquil setting, breathing air that these early plants are helping to enrich with oxygen, you feel yourself becoming part of the delta's eternal rhythm, the slow pulse of water finding its way to the sea, carrying with it the dissolved essence of continents and the dreams of future forests.
Night arrives in the Devonian world not with the sudden darkness familiar to modern times, but with a gradual deepening that seems to rise from the earth itself. The sky transitions through layers of amber and deep gold before settling into a soft, star-filled darkness unmarred by any artificial light. In this ancient night, the cosmos displays itself with a clarity that will never again be witnessed once civilization begins its bright interference with the heavens. The delta landscape around you transforms under starlight into something even more magical than it appeared during the day. Water surfaces become mirrors for the stellar display above, creating the illusion that you're suspended between two infinite skies. The gentle movement of the shallow channels causes the reflected stars to dance and shimmer, turning the entire valley into a living constellation. As darkness settles, new sounds emerge from the Devonian night. The soft splash of early amphibians moving between pools becomes more frequent. These creatures are primarily nocturnal, using the cover of darkness to venture further from water in search of the small arthropods that form their diet. Their calls, when they come, are simple and melodic, lacking the complex territorial songs that frogs will develop in later epochs. The insect chorus, which provided a gentle background hum during the day, now becomes more organized and purposeful. Early crickets and their relatives fill the air with rhythmic chirping that speaks to one of evolution's most successful innovations, the use of sound for communication and mate selection. This primitive music creates natural rhythms that seem to synchronize with your heartbeat, drawing you deeper into the peaceful cadence of ancient night. You notice how differently the plant world responds to darkness. Without the complex chemical processes that govern modern plant behavior, these early terrestrial pioneers simply rest, their simple leaves folding slightly in response to the cooler air and the absence of solar energy. There's something deeply peaceful about their stillness, a reminder that rest is one of life's most fundamental requirements. The air carries new scents in the darkness, the cool exhalation of water slowly releasing the day's accumulated warmth, the green smell of plants processing the evening's moisture, and underneath it all, the clean scent of a world breathing freely without the chemical complexities that will characterize later atmospheres. From your resting place beside the delta's network of channels, you can observe one of the night's most remarkable phenomena, bioluminescence. Small organisms in the water produce gentle glows that create brief, moving lights beneath the surface. These living sparks represent some of evolution's earliest experiments with biochemical light production, turning the shallow waters into a galaxy of earthbound stars. The temperature has dropped to a comfortable coolness that makes the warm, humid air of the day seem like a distant memory. This natural air conditioning system, created by the interplay between water and vegetation, maintains perfect comfort without any mechanical intervention. It's a reminder of the elegant efficiency that characterizes natural systems operating in balance. As you lie back on the soft, mossy ground, you can feel the gentle vibration of the earth itself, not the mechanical tremor of human activity, but the deep, slow pulse of a living planet. The Devonian earth breathes with tidal forces, geological processes, and the collective respiration of countless organisms, all working in harmony to maintain the delicate balance that makes life possible. The night sky above displays constellations that would be familiar to modern astronomers, but their light arrives unfiltered by the atmospheric complications of later eras. Each star burns with crystal clarity, and the Milky Way stretches across the heavens like a river of light, mirroring the network of water channels that surround your resting place. In this perfect convergence of earth and sky, water and air, past and eternity, you find yourself cradled by the ancient night like a child held in the arms of time itself. Dawn comes slowly to the Devonian world, not with the sharp transition of later eras, but with a gradual lightening that seems to seep through the very air itself. The stars fade reluctantly, as if hesitant to abandon their perfect reflection in the still waters of the delta. As light returns, you find yourself drawn away from the water channels toward higher ground, where the early forests grow thickest and most mysterious. The path leads you through groves of lycophyte trees that have grown larger and more stately than any you've encountered before. Some reach heights of 40 feet or more, their scale-like leaves creating a canopy that filters the morning light into soft, green-gold columns. These ancient trees represent millions of years of patient evolution, each ring in their simple trunks recording seasons of gradual adaptation to terrestrial life. Beneath this primitive canopy, the forest floor has developed its own ecosystem. Fallen lycophyte branches decompose slowly in the humid air, creating natural terraces and hidden alcoves where smaller plants flourish. The ground is carpeted with a thick layer of early mosses and liverworts, creating a surface so soft it seems designed for rest and contemplation. In this deeper forest, the silence takes on an almost sacred quality. The sounds that do penetrate, the gentle drip of condensation, the soft rustle of small arthropods moving through the leaf litter, the distant murmur of streams, serve only to emphasize the profound peace that pervades this ancient sanctuary. It's as if the forest itself has learned the art of meditation, achieving a perfect balance between activity and stillness. You discover a natural clearing where several of the largest lycophyte trees form a rough circle, their canopies interweaving overhead to create a living cathedral. In the center of this space, a spring emerges from the earth, creating a small pool of the clearest water you've seen in your journey. The spring bubbles up from deep aquifers, bringing with it minerals that will nourish generations of forest growth. Around the spring's edge, you notice some of the most advanced plants the Devonian world has produced. These early seed ferns display delicate fronds that catch and hold the filtered light, using it to power the chemical processes that will eventually transform the planet's atmosphere. Their presence around the spring creates a garden that speaks to the future forests that will one day cover much of the Earth's surface. The water of the spring is cool and inviting, its surface occasionally disturbed by the gentle impact of water droplets falling from the canopy above. Each ripple spreads outward in perfect circles, creating momentary mandalas that form and dissolve in endless repetition. The sound of the spring, a soft, continuous bubbling, creates a natural white noise that seems to resonate with something deep in your consciousness. As you settle beside this forest spring, you become aware of the subtle rhythms that govern this ancient ecosystem. The trees grow according to their own slow schedule, adding rings with patient regularity. The smaller plants respond to daily cycles of light and shadow, opening and closing their primitive stomata in rhythm with the sun's movement. Even the arthropods that inhabit the forest floor follow predictable patterns, emerging from shelter to feed, then returning to safety with clockwork precision. The air in this forest sanctuary carries a unique quality, rich with oxygen from the photosynthesizing plants, humid from the constant transpiration of water through primitive leaves, and clean in a way that speaks to the absence of any pollutions save those produced by natural processes. Breathing this ancient air feels like receiving a direct gift from the planet's own respiratory system. In the distance, you can hear the calls of early amphibians as they move through the forest streams, their simple vocalizations adding a musical element to the forest symphony. These sounds blend with the whisper of wind through primitive leaves and the soft percussion of water drops, creating a natural composition that seems to embody the very essence of peace. The forest path gradually opens as you follow a gentle stream away from the deep woodland sanctuary. The towering lycophytes give way to more open terrain where sunlight reaches the ground unfiltered, creating the Devonian world's version of meadowlands. Here, in these sun-drenched clearings, evolution experiments with new forms of plant architecture, each species finding its own solution to the challenges of terrestrial life. The landscape spreads before you in rolling waves of green and gold, punctuated by clusters of early trees and groves of tree-sized horsetails. These ancient relatives of modern horsetails stand like living bamboo, their segmented stems reaching toward the sky with elegant simplicity. Their surfaces are ridged and textured, designed to maximize strength while minimizing weight, engineering solutions that will be rediscovered by human architects millions of years in the future. Between these stands of primitive trees, vast carpets of low-growing plants create natural lawns unlike anything that will exist in later periods. These aren't grasses. True grasses won't evolve for another 100 million years, but rather communities of simple vascular plants that have learned to thrive in direct sunlight. Their leaves are small and efficient, designed to capture energy while conserving precious water in the bright, warming air. The stream you've been following meanders lazily through this open landscape, its banks lined with plants that represent some of evolution's most successful early experiments. Primitive ferns unfurl their fronds in graceful spirals, each new leaf a perfect mathematical curve that maximizes surface area while maintaining structural integrity. The sight of these unfurling fronds creates a sense of gentle motion, as if the landscape itself is slowly stretching and awakening. As morning progresses toward midday, the quality of light in these ancient meadows becomes particularly magical. The sun, unobscured by the complex atmospheric conditions of later eras, bathes everything in clean, golden radiance. This light has a quality that seems almost tangible, warm and nourishing in a way that makes you feel as though you're being gently heated from within. Small arthropods move through this sunlit world with unhurried purpose. Early spiders, their bodies still experimental in design, create simple webs between plant stems. These primitive nets are crude compared to the architectural marvels that spiders will eventually weave, but they serve their purpose with elegant efficiency. Watching a spider tend its web creates a meditative experience. Each careful adjustment of the silk strands speaks to the patient craft that characterizes all successful life. The air in these meadows carries scents that are both familiar and utterly foreign. The sweet smell of photosynthesis, that green perfume of plants converting sunlight into life, mingles with the earthy aroma of soil still learning its chemical composition. Occasionally, a breeze carries hints of the distant ocean, reminding you that this terrestrial world is still intimately connected to its marine origins. You find a comfortable spot on a small hill that overlooks the entire meadow system. From this vantage point, you can observe how the early plants organize themselves into communities. Certain species cluster around water sources, while others seem to prefer the drier, better drained areas between streams. It's a primitive version of ecological zonation, but it demonstrates the same fundamental principles that will govern plant communities for all of Earth's future. The sound landscape of these meadows consists largely of gentle whispers, the soft movement of primitive leaves in the breeze, the quiet gurgle of streams finding their way between plant communities, and always that peaceful humming of early insects going about their ancient business. These sounds blend into a natural symphony that seems designed to promote deep relaxation and contemplative rest. As you recline on the warm, soft ground cover, feeling the sun's rays filter through the clean air to warm your skin, you become part of this ancient pastoral scene, a temporary inhabitant of Earth's first successful experiment with terrestrial paradise. As the day reaches its gentle peak and begins its slow descent toward evening, you find yourself drawn back toward water. The stream you've been following has grown wider and deeper, fed by countless smaller tributaries that drain the ancient meadowlands. Here, where multiple waterways converge, the Devonian world reveals one of its most peaceful secrets: vast wetlands that serve as nurseries for both aquatic and terrestrial life. These wetlands stretch as far as the eye can see, a maze of shallow channels, temporary pools, and small islands crowned with clusters of primitive plants. The water moves with almost imperceptible slowness, creating perfect mirrors for the sky above. The entire landscape seems suspended between earth and heaven, neither fully terrestrial nor completely aquatic, but something altogether new in the planet's long story. The plant life in these wetlands displays remarkable diversity for such an early period in terrestrial evolution. Tall rushes, ancestors of modern sedges, form graceful stands in the deeper water, their simple leaves swaying gently in the barely perceptible current. On the slightly higher ground of the small islands, early conifers have established small groves, their primitive needle-like leaves adapted to conserve water even in this humid environment. Along the muddy margins where water meets land, you discover some of the Devonian's most charming inhabitants, communities of early amphibians that have made these wetlands their permanent home. Unlike their more adventurous cousins who venture into the deeper forests, these creatures remain close to water, their lives perfectly balanced between the aquatic world of their ancestors and the terrestrial realm of their descendants. The amphibians move with unhurried grace through the shallow water, their movements creating gentle ripples that spread outward in perfect concentric circles. Their calls, when they come, are simple and musical, not the complex choruses that frogs will develop in later eras, but pleasant, rhythmic sounds that add to the wetland's natural symphony. As afternoon light begins to slant more horizontally across the landscape, it transforms the wetlands into something magical. The water surfaces become sheets of gold and amber, reflecting not just the sky, but the delicate forms of the plants that line the channels. Every reed, every primitive leaf, every blade of early vegetation appears twice, once in reality and once in its perfect aquatic reflection. The air above these waters carries its own unique character, rich with moisture and the green scent of photosynthesis happening on a massive scale. Oxygen levels here are higher than in the drier uplands, making each breath feel particularly nourishing and clean. The humidity creates a natural greenhouse effect that maintains perfect temperature, neither too warm nor too cool, but comfortably balanced for extended rest and observation. Small fish move through the clearer channels with movements so graceful they seem choreographed. These early freshwater species represent some of evolution's most successful transitions from marine to terrestrial environments. Their scales catch and scatter the afternoon light, creating brief flashes of silver and gold that ripple outward from their passage like living jewels moving through liquid amber. You find the perfect resting spot on a small rise that overlooks the entire wetland system. From here, you can observe the intricate dance between water and land that defines this transitional environment. Channels divide and merge according to ancient patterns, creating natural geometries that speak to the mathematical principles underlying all fluid dynamics. The constant, gentle sound of water moving through this landscape creates a natural white noise that seems designed to promote deep relaxation. It's neither the crash of ocean waves nor the rush of mountain streams, but something softer and more intimate, the quiet conversation between water and earth that has continued uninterrupted for billions of years. Evening approaches across the wetlands with the same gentle patience that characterizes everything in this ancient world. The horizontal light of late afternoon transforms the water surfaces into sheets of molten copper, while the primitive plants that line the channels appear as dark silhouettes against the luminous sky. In this magical hour, you discover one of the Devonians' most remarkable innovations: floating gardens of early aquatic plants. These aren't the familiar water lilies or lotus flowers of later periods, but something far more primitive and yet equally beautiful. Simple vascular plants have learned to live their entire lives on the water's surface, their roots dangling into the nutrient-rich depths, while their leaves spread across the liquid plain like living lily pads.
The effect creates natural rafts of vegetation that drift slowly with the barely perceptible current. You find yourself walking along a raised pathway formed by accumulated sediment and plant matter, one of Earth's first attempts at creating stable land in an aquatic environment. This natural causeway provides perfect vantage points for observing the floating gardens as they drift past in stately procession. Each plant community is like a small island ecosystem, complete with its own population of tiny arthropods and early aquatic insects. The water between these floating gardens is so clear and still that it creates perfect windows into the underwater world below. Here, you can observe some of the most peaceful scenes in all of natural history. Early fish moving through underwater forests of primitive plants. Their movements so graceful and unhurried that they seem to be swimming through liquid meditation. Small freshwater sharks patrol these ancient waters, but their presence adds to rather than detracts from the peaceful atmosphere. These early predators move with the fluid efficiency of perfectly adapted organisms, their streamlined forms representing millions of years of aquatic refinement. There's something deeply satisfying about watching such perfect adaptation in action. Evolution's solutions to the challenges of aquatic life displayed with elegant simplicity. The plant life beneath the water surface creates underwater landscapes of extraordinary beauty. Primitive mosses and liverworts have colonized the shallow bottoms, creating green carpets that sway gently in the water's movement. Early ferns have learned to grow completely submerged, their fronds creating underwater gardens that filter the golden light into dancing patterns on the sandy bottom. As the sun continues its descent toward the horizon, the quality of light filtering through the water becomes increasingly magical. Shafts of illumination penetrate the clear depths, creating columns of light that seem solid enough to touch. These underwater cathedrals provide perfect spaces for contemplation, where the gentle movement of aquatic plants creates an ever-changing play of light and shadow. The sounds of this aquatic evening are subtle and soothing. The gentle lap of tiny waves against the floating plant rafts, the soft bubble of gases rising from decomposing organic matter on the bottom, and the quiet splash of early amphibians moving between their aquatic and terrestrial worlds. These sounds blend into a natural symphony that speaks to the fundamental rhythms of life itself. You settle on a comfortable patch of moss-covered ground at the water's edge, your feet dangling into the warm, clear water. From this position, you can observe the entire aquatic ecosystem in perfect comfort. Fish occasionally brush against your submerged feet with movements so gentle they feel like aquatic caresses, while the floating gardens drift past like slow-motion parade floats in nature's own celebration of life. The air above these twilight waters carries the perfume of aquatic photosynthesis, a clean, green scent that speaks to the massive oxygen production happening all around you. Each breath feels particularly nourishing, rich with the life-giving gases that these pioneering plants are pumping into Earth's ancient atmosphere. Night falls completely over the ancient wetlands, transforming them into something that exists more in dreams than in waking reality. The floating gardens you observed in the twilight now drift through darkness like ghost ships, carrying their cargo of primitive life across waters that mirror the star-filled sky above. In this perfect darkness, unmarred by any artificial light, the Devonian world reveals its most peaceful and contemplative face. The lagoon you've discovered at the heart of the wetland system stretches before you like a natural amphitheater, its still waters creating a perfect mirror for the cosmic display overhead. Here, where multiple streams converge before flowing gently toward the distant sea, evolution has created one of its most serene sanctuaries. The water is so calm and clear that the reflected stars seem to hang in liquid space, creating the illusion of floating between two infinite skies.
Along the lagoon's gentle shores, bioluminescent organisms create living constellations in the water. These early experiments with biochemical light production turn the shallows into a galaxy of earthbound stars, each tiny organism contributing its own soft glow to a display that rivals the heavens above. The effect is hypnotic, gentle pulses of blue-green light that ebb and flow like the breathing of the water itself. The plant communities around the lagoon have settled into their nighttime rest, their simple leaves folded or closed in response to the darkness and cooler air. Without the complex circadian rhythms that will characterize later plant life, these early terrestrial pioneers simply pause, conserving their energy for tomorrow's photosynthetic work. Their stillness adds to the profound peace that pervades this ancient sanctuary. Early amphibians move through the warm water with movements so gentle they barely disturb the surface. Their calls, when they come, are soft and melodic, creating natural music that seems to harmonize with some deep cosmic rhythm. These simple songs speak to one of evolution's most important discoveries, the power of sound to bridge the gap between individual organisms, creating the first primitive communities based on communication rather than mere proximity. The air above the lagoon carries its own special quality in the darkness. Rich with moisture and the oxygen produced by countless aquatic plants, it feels almost nourishing to breathe. The humidity creates a natural greenhouse effect that maintains perfect temperature, neither too warm nor too cool, but balanced at the exact point where consciousness can rest without any physical discomfort. You find yourself on a small peninsula that extends into the lagoon, providing an ideal vantage point for observing this nighttime aquatic world. The ground beneath you is soft with accumulated organic matter, centuries of plant growth and decay creating a natural cushion that seems designed for extended rest and contemplation. From this peaceful vantage point, you can observe the gentle currents that move through the lagoon like liquid thoughts. These flows are so subtle they're barely visible, revealed only by the slow drift of floating plant matter and the occasional disturbance of the reflected stars. The water moves with the patience of geological time, following paths carved by countless seasons of gentle persistence. Small fish create brief disturbances in the bioluminescent displays as they move through the shallows, their passage marked by trails of living light that fade slowly back into darkness. These early vertebrates represent some of evolution's most successful experiments with freshwater life, their forms perfectly adapted to this intermediate world between the ancient seas and the emerging terrestrial realm. The sound of this nighttime lagoon consists mainly of gentle whispers, the soft lap of tiny wavelets against the shore, the quiet bubble of gases rising from the rich bottom sediments, and the distant calls of amphibians creating their simple but beautiful nocturnal chorus. These sounds blend into a natural lullaby that seems to resonate with something fundamental in human consciousness. In the profound stillness of the Devonian night, time seems to slow even further, each moment stretching like honey through consciousness. The starlit lagoon has become a portal to deeper states of awareness, where the boundary between observer and observed begins to dissolve into the ancient rhythms that govern all life. Here, in this perfect sanctuary, you discover that the Devonian world offers something beyond mere observation. It provides a direct connection to the fundamental processes that shape existence itself. The bioluminescent displays in the water have intensified, creating patterns that seem almost intentional in their beauty. Spirals of living light drift across the lagoon's surface, following currents too subtle for the conscious mind to track, but perfectly aligned with the deeper mathematics that govern fluid dynamics. These living mandalas form and dissolve in endless succession, each one a brief meditation on the themes of emergence and dissolution that characterize all natural processes.
You notice that your breathing has synchronized with some deeper rhythm, perhaps the gentle rise and fall of the lagoon surface, or the pulsing of the bioluminescent organisms, or something even more fundamental that connects all living things to the planet's own respiratory cycle. This alignment feels completely natural, as if your body remembers something ancient about how to exist in harmony with larger systems. The plant communities around the lagoon seem to be breathing too, their simple forms expanding and contracting almost imperceptibly as they process the night air. These early terrestrial pioneers operate according to rhythms established over millions of years of patient adaptation, and their quiet constancy creates a sense of being held within something vast and reliable. Early amphibians continue their gentle movements through the warm water, but now their presence feels more like a shared meditation than mere observation. Their simple calls have organized into patterns that speak to the first experiments in collective consciousness, individual organisms learning to coordinate their activities through sound and rhythm. The result is a natural symphony that seems to emanate from the water itself. The air around the lagoon has become almost tangible in its richness, each breath delivering not just oxygen, but something deeper, the concentrated essence of a world in the process of becoming. The humidity carries microscopic particles of pollen and spores, the genetic material of countless experiments in terrestrial life, making each inhalation a participation in evolution's most creative processes. Above, the cosmic display continues its eternal rotation, but now the stars seem closer, more accessible, as if the clear Devonian atmosphere has removed some fundamental barrier between Earth and sky. The Milky Way stretches across the heavens like a river of light, mirroring the network of water channels that surrounds your resting place, and creating a sense of perfect correspondence between the very large and the very small. Small disturbances in the water create expanding rings that intersect and interfere with each other, creating complex patterns that seem to encode some message about the fundamental nature of reality. These wave interactions follow mathematical principles that won't be discovered by conscious minds for hundreds of millions of years, yet they create a visual music that speaks directly to something deeper than rational understanding. The temperature has reached perfect equilibrium, neither warm nor cool, but exactly matched to the requirements of comfortable existence. This natural thermostat, created by the interplay between water, vegetation, and atmosphere, maintains ideal conditions without any mechanical intervention, demonstrating the elegant efficiency of systems that have evolved over geological timescales. As you rest on the soft, organic cushion of accumulated plant matter, feeling perfectly supported by the earth while remaining completely comfortable, you realize that you have found something rare in any era, a state of complete harmony between consciousness and environment, where the act of simply being becomes a form of active participation in the planet's own dreaming. Deep night has settled over the ancient lagoon like a gentle blanket woven from starlight and time itself. In this profound stillness, the Devonian world reveals its most intimate secrets, the quiet processes that connect all life to the deeper rhythms of existence. Here, suspended between the reflected cosmos above and below, you find yourself in a state of perfect rest, cradled by an environment that seems designed by nature itself for peaceful contemplation. The bioluminescent organisms in the water have settled into their most gentle phase, creating soft, pulsing glows that ebb and flow like the breathing of the lagoon itself. These living lights no longer seem separate from their surroundings, but appear as visible manifestations of the life force that flows through everything: water, plants, early animals, and the very air you breathe. The entire lagoon pulses with this gentle rhythm, creating a sense of being held within the heartbeat of the planet itself. Around the lagoon's peaceful shores, the primitive plant communities rest in perfect stillness. Their simple forms, silhouetted against the star-filled sky, speak to millions of years of patient evolution, each species finding its own perfect balance between the requirements of terrestrial life and the ancient memory of aquatic origins. In their quietude, these early pioneers demonstrate the profound wisdom of knowing when to act and when to simply be. The air has reached a state of perfect equilibrium, neither moving nor still, but existing in that rare condition where atmosphere becomes nearly invisible, allowing consciousness to expand beyond the usual boundaries imposed by physical sensation. Each breath brings not just oxygen, but something more subtle, the concentrated essence of a world in perfect balance, unmarked by the complexities that will characterize later eras. Early amphibians move through the lagoon with movements so gentle they seem more like thoughts made visible than physical creatures. Their presence adds to rather than disturbs the profound peace. Their simple existence serving as a reminder that life's greatest achievements often lie not in complexity, but in finding perfect harmony with one's environment. The water itself has become a living meditation, its surface so still that it creates a perfect mirror for both the stars above and the gentle lights below. In this reflected cosmos, the boundaries between up and down, earth and sky, self and environment begin to dissolve into something larger and more encompassing. The lagoon becomes a window into the fundamental unity that underlies all apparent separation. Small fish occasionally create brief disturbances in this liquid mirror, their movements generating expanding circles that intersect and interact in patterns of mathematical beauty. These wave interactions create temporary mandalas of motion that form and dissolve according to physical laws that govern everything from subatomic particles to galactic clusters, revealing the deep connections that link all scales of existence. The sound environment has simplified to its most essential elements: the barely audible whisper of water against shore, the soft exchange of gases between plants and atmosphere, and occasionally the gentle call of an amphibian adding its voice to the night's peaceful chorus. These sounds blend into something that transcends ordinary hearing, becoming more felt than heard, more experienced than observed. The temperature remains in perfect balance, exactly matched to the requirements of comfortable existence. This natural climate control, achieved through the elegant interplay of water, vegetation, and atmosphere, creates conditions so ideal that the body's regulatory systems can completely relax, allowing consciousness to rest in a state of effortless comfort. As you lie on the soft, organic foundation that generations of plant growth have created, feeling perfectly supported by the earth while remaining completely at ease, time itself seems to pause. Past and future fade into irrelevance, leaving only this eternal moment of perfect peace, perfect balance, and perfect unity with the ancient world that holds you in its timeless embrace.
In the deepest hour of the ancient night, when the Devonian world rests in perfect stillness, something begins to shift. Not of the external environment, the lagoon remains as peaceful as ever. The bioluminescent lights continue their gentle pulsing, the primitive plants maintain their quiet vigil. But in the quality of your experience itself, the profound connection you felt with this ancient world gradually transforms into something even more fundamental: the natural transition from wakefulness into the deeper rest that all living things require. The starlit lagoon no longer seems like a place you're visiting, but rather a state of consciousness you're inhabiting. The gentle rhythms that govern this ancient ecosystem, the slow pulse of bioluminescence, the barely perceptible movement of water, the quiet breathing of early plants, begin to synchronize with your own internal rhythms, creating a harmony so complete that the boundaries between observer and environment dissolve entirely. The early amphibians in the warm water have settled into their own version of rest, their movements becoming slower and more dreamlike. Their simple calls fade to whispers, then to silence, as even these pioneering vertebrates surrender to the natural cycle that governs all life. Their presence becomes less a matter of observation and more a sense of companionship in the universal need for peaceful restoration. The bioluminescent displays in the water gradually dim to their softest setting, creating gentle glows that pulse in rhythm with something deeper than consciousness, the fundamental life force that connects all organisms to the planet's own vital signs. These lights no longer capture attention, but instead support the natural progression toward deeper states of rest, like organic nightlights designed by evolution itself. Around the lagoon, the primitive plant communities settle into their most profound stillness. Without the complex chemical processes that characterize later plant life, these early terrestrial pioneers simply pause, their simple forms becoming part of the landscape's own preparation for regenerative rest. Their quietude speaks to the wisdom of knowing when activity should yield to restoration. The air itself seems to thicken with the essence of peaceful sleep, each breath carrying not just the oxygen produced by countless aquatic plants, but also something more subtle, the concentrated tranquility of a world that knows how to rest completely. The humidity creates perfect conditions for the kind of deep, restorative rest that leaves consciousness refreshed and renewed. The water's surface becomes so still it ceases to seem like water at all, transforming into a perfect mirror that reflects not just the stars, but the very concept of peace itself. In this liquid stillness, all the gentle movements and soft lights of the Devonian night begin to fade, not disappearing, but rather merging into the deeper rhythms of sleep and dreams. The sounds of this ancient world, the soft whisper of water, the quiet exchange of gases between plants and atmosphere, gradually transform from external sensations into internal rhythms, becoming part of your own breathing, your own heartbeat, your own natural progression toward complete rest. The lagoon's lullaby becomes indistinguishable from the sound of your own peaceful breathing. As the profound stillness of the Devonian night settles around you like the softest blanket, the ancient world begins its own gentle transition. The remarkable journey through Earth's distant past, through fungal forests and floating gardens, past gentle amphibians and bioluminescent lagoons, slowly transforms from vivid experience into the kind of peaceful memory that accompanies the deepest, most restorative sleep. The Devonian world, with all its quiet wonders and gentle innovations, becomes a perfect companion for your own journey into rest. Its ancient rhythms continue their eternal dance, but now they serve as the natural soundtrack for dreams, carrying you safely into the kind of deep, peaceful sleep that connects all living things across all of time.